Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Cricket on the Top Order podcast. And look, there's cricket coming left, right and centre. Cricket galore in the cricketing world, both red ball and white ball. We're going to cover it all here on the pod. India versus West Indies. West Indies finally show a bit of fight and give us something positive to talk about. We've got the Women's World Cup, which is wide open, and there's some cracking games going on in that Women's World Cup. Black Cap versus England is coming up. Stu, you're probably going to be all over that, I imagine. South Africa, Pakistan is going on live as we speak. And we'll touch on the T20 World Cup Asia qualifiers. Stu, I think you've got that covered as well. All that and more on the Top Order podcast as soon as we find the green button. Brilliant. So firstly, I have to address some feedback from the mailbag. I have been given some feedback on the pod regarding my Derek Zoolander-like inability to turn right. So I'm going to address that directly by addressing Raj directly throughout this podcast and try and address that feedback in a positive and constructive way.
So I'll just be standing over here in the corner
by yourself. Yeah,
there's no animosity from my side on this. So.
No, it's just I just need to pay more attention to you, Raj, going forward, which I will do. And all feedback on the podcast is welcome, both constructive and satirical. Let's get in and talk about some of the cricket. India versus West Indies, second test concluded a couple of hours ago as we record this on a Tuesday evening, and some more fight from the West Indies boys, and we'll cover a little bit of stock watch as well, because I think there's some stock that's going up in both of your corners this week in respect of Sai Sudharsan, Stu, and Dhruv Jurel for you, Raj. But coming to the game sort of overall, what are our big takeaways from the second test?
I don't know. Yeah, it's sort of an interesting one, isn't it? Because where do we want to start in the sense that, like, full disclosure to everyone, we all thought we were going to be recording yesterday. We all went, oh yeah, we'll record Monday night because that test will be over. Especially once India piled up those runs on the first day, second day as well. Knock the West Indies over.
I think it might have been Raj actually who said after the first session, thinking the game's already over.
Yeah, and it felt like it was, right. It felt like it was for the majority of the game until the declaration, and maybe that's where we want to start, in that's because that's kind of where the game came to life, and we can talk about that, and then maybe go back to some of those Indian batters in that first innings who really impressed. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know. Do we need to address the follow on in general? India knock the West Indies over, sort of business as usual in that first innings. West Indies stumbled and got to a total that was, under the follow-on, but close enough to think twice about it.
I actually thought they did really, really well because they'd just been in the field in India for 130 overs, and they came out and showed a little bit of fight. Their top order scored some runs in those first innings, but more importantly, they kept the bowlers having to go back. I mean, eventually they did the follow-on anyway, but they were able to actually bat some time. They didn't go fall apart and have the bowlers have to start batting, within a couple of hours. So I think they did a great job showing some heart in that second innings, and that's the big thing that came out of the first test, was that they wanted to show some heart with their batting, and I think they did a great job with that.
Steady improvement for the West Indies over the course of this series. They've been maligned mostly on this pod, but maligned probably the world over for being a side that doesn't make big scores, makes scores between 140 and not 190 for the most part. Came out, didn't get many big scores in the first innings, but in the second innings, what I really liked is that we saw an opening bat stand up and be prepared to do the hard work against some quality bowling. John Campbell was rewarded with, I think, the third 100 by an opener for a West Indies team since 2013. So he joins his opening mate, Tej Chanderpaul, and I think it's Craig Brathwaite as the only West Indian openers to score 100 in the last 12 or 13 years. And then we saw conversion from Shai Hope, which made me really happy. He's a terrific quick cricketer. He deserves all of the on-field success that comes his way. He's burdened now with the captaincy of a West Indies side that is underperforming against our hopes, I think, more than our expectations. But 100 for him. West Indies now put on 390 and make India bat again, having India having enforced that follow-on, being 270 ahead. Do we have any other West Indies points before we get on to the Indian team? Would you enforce the follow-on, Raj?
Personally, I wouldn't have, and everybody watching this will go, it's easy for Raj to say that, in hindsight, but I did mention that to you.
Yeah, you did say it right at the time.
Before it happened, is that I just, especially in the subcontinent, but generally, especially if we know that something or a pitch is going to take spin, you don't want to be batting fourth. You just don't want to have the opportunity for the opposition to make you have to chase anything batting fourth. So I would have gone out there, scored a quick 150, 200, and then put them back in, and probably on the same day. But at least you've given yourself that buffer, and they batted out of their skins to actually get India to bat again. But they would have had to do something really, really crazy to have won that game if India had gone out there in the third innings and scored a few more runs.
I think the thing was that India, I think justifiably based on the 3 innings that they bowled previously in the series, they treated the West Indies in making that decision like an inferior team. They went, I think we saw it in both the declarations that they had in the first test and in the second test, because I think they could have easily scored more runs in both of those innings, and they decided not to because they thought we kind of have enough. Like we've got enough, and the way that they enforced the follow-on was, we'll just bowl them out again. Like, it doesn't matter that we have been in the field for a reasonable amount of time. We have, I feel like if they were playing a side that they thought was going to be more competitive, they would have gone exactly what you said, put on another few runs, worn the pitch down a little bit, because it was a nice pitch to bat on. And for the majority of that test, even, we even saw that last wicket partnership, right, with Greaves and Jayden Seales putting on those runs. It wasn't specifically, awful to bat on. Wasn't turning square. There were a few. Kuldeep got a couple to go. He obviously got that one to skid on to Imlak. But, it was a reasonable pitch to bat on. And I think that the way they went about things suggested we are better than you, and we are going to finish this game well. And look, I think we should circle back to maybe Campbell and Hope, because we probably need to give them a little bit more credit. I know that Campbell's an interesting one, and back to my point about treating them as an inferior side. One of those DRS decisions goes to Washington Sundar. It felt like he had 3 in about the space of an over or two, and one of them goes for him and gets Campbell out. We probably are sitting here in a situation where we're recording yesterday, the game's over, and we're talking about another innings victory. But in saying that, John Campbell was pretty unlucky in the first innings to get out, smashed that one, and Sai Sudharsan's kind of caught it with his hands in his helmet. But he dug really deep. When I watch that guy, he gives me no confidence. Quite honestly, I don't have confidence in him that he's going to last for a long time, particularly against the seamers. And so maybe this suited him better. I haven't really seen him play much against spin in the past. But he looked quite confident against the spin, playing aggressively against the sweeps. That second innings, they all kind of played a lot more aggressively and to the spinners. So yeah, I thought they actually, as you said, if you're talking about steps forward, the West Indies actually came out in that second innings with a game plan, and those 2 players in particular, along with Roston Chase for a little bit while he was in, and then Greaves, they came out and actually delivered on what I think the game plan was.
Yeah, I think one of the key matchups was how the opening batsmen were going to go against the new ball, because in India, that the spinners are going to take wickets. And I think that they sort of turned it on their head a little bit this game. They went out there, a mixture of them, batted well in that top 4. And, if you're the West Indies, even though you've lost, I think you're sort of a lot happier with your performance this time around than you were after the first test. So that's all you can ask for.
I mean, they've batted here 200 overs across the course of that test match in a row. And so they've put India in the field for a long period of time. That's, over 2 days in modern test cricket. And I think they've got a lot to be proud of. Yes, they will have gone down in this test match by 7 wickets, belies the fact that West Indies showed a lot of grit, showed a lot of determination, showed a lot of fight. And I think, as we said, I think after the Australia series where they won that test match in Brisbane, attack should be the modus operandi of the West Indies. When in doubt, take the game to the opposition. If I was the West Indies, I would rather lose trying to win and trying to be aggressive than trying to match teams in a grinded out, wear them down, battle of attrition type of cricket. So I was really happy with the second innings in particular from the West Indies, even though the strike rates of sort of 57 and 48-ish in the hundreds belie the fact that they were prepared to take the West Indies bowlers on as well as to bat time.
I think the way they went about taking on Kuldeep was the most interesting to me, because obviously he'd taken 5 in that first innings and he was, very, very effective. But he was effective sort of, he bowled that ball to Shai Hope, hitting the stumps. He was attacking these stumps. But they came out from ball one against him in that second innings. They went, we're not going to let you just bowl to us. You're going to have to come up with a new plan. And I think to his credit, over the long term, he actually did come up with a new plan. He started bowling on leg stump, got the wicket of Imlach, ended up, fairly lucky to kind of get the chase wicket in the end. And then Kari Peer just smashes one up and slogs one up in the air. Was a bit of a reckless shot. But, that Imlach wicket at the time, I think, was very, very important. And yeah, I was pleased to see, from a spin bowling point of view, I was pleased to see Kuldeep kind of get those wickets in the first innings, but then get really challenged in the second innings and have to come up with something different. Because I think I saw in this, which surprised me, it sort of surprised me, but didn't surprise me. I think this is only his 15th test or something. He's been around for a long time. He's played a lot of white ball cricket and stuff, but I don't think he's actually played that many tests. So, to have him bowl in a situation where he actually had to come up with new plans was cool to see.
And just sort of stick with spin for a second. What did you make of the West Indies spin units, particularly Jamal Warrican? I didn't think that he was going to come on this tour and sort of take all the wickets that they did take, pretty much. And he looked the most dangerous out of any of the bowlers that they've had so far on this tour. What did you make of the spin unit?
I think Warrican's an honest spinner. Again, that sounds negative.
It sounds, as my son would say, quite disrespectful.
Yeah, but I don't really mean it in that way. I think that in certain situations, in India, in Pakistan, what we see now, that's kind of what you need. You need a bowler like that who can just bowl in the areas where you can pick up wickets. He got a few to turn, picked up a few nice wickets. I don't think he was really well supported. I think Pierre probably bowls too many loose balls, unfortunately, and Chase is probably he's slightly better than a part-time spinner, but I don't think he's a frontline spinner in a side that, and he wasn't used like a frontline spinner. He didn't use himself like that. So I think yes, positives for Warrican, because I don't think we've seen him be super effective in other conditions so far. But I don't know. That was one of the big problems for the West Indies in this series, that they just couldn't get wickets, and it hasn't been a problem for them when they've been in conditions where their fast bowlers can thrive. It's been the other way around, right? It's been, okay, well, we can't get any runs, but our fast bowlers can cause some problems. Their fast bowlers, because of the conditions, were and because of injury, were sort of taken out of these matches. And the spin depth probably just isn't there for the West Indies at the moment.
Right, 14 minutes into the pod, I'd like to call to order a non-quorum meeting of the Top Order Cricket Investment Podcast group. We've got a couple of points of order on today's pod. Firstly, namely one B. Sai Sudharsan, and secondly, one Dhruv Jurel. I'd like to talk to the Jurel point first, Raj, because you're a big Jurel fan. You hold all of the collective position that we have at the Top Order Podcast on Dhruv Jurel. Although if you're prepared to share any options, I'm quite happy to take them off your hands. What have you seen from Jurel, and has he done anything for you to assert or reaffirm your position that he's good enough to be the permanent wicketkeeper for India going forward?
Yeah, so if we're going to sort of stay in the sort of narrative that we're using, I think you're going to have to wait for the BCCI to release some more shares, because you're not getting any of mine.
Fair enough.
I really, really, I I'm really on board this train as far as it goes. I think that he is a very, very good batsman. We talked about it last week. He's got a technique that will translate to runs all the way around the world. He's got a great temperament, and he can wicketkeep as far as I can tell to my untrained eye. He looks very good behind the stumps. I think that he, in my mind, is the number one. If we were to put him on a depth chart for red ball cricket, I'd put him ahead of Rishabh Pant at the moment, because I think that Jurel can play a more complete game in terms of if he's coming out at 4 for 20, I think he can do a job. If he's coming out at 4 for 400, I think he can do a job as well. Whereas, Rishabh Pant might not have those dimensions to his game at this stage. So, yeah, I really like the look of Dhruv Jurel, definitely in red ball cricket.
If we have one less of the Washington Sundar, Akshar, Jadeja triumvirate, and you throw in, the pace bowling all-rounders and Yashasvi Kumar Reddy and so forth, we have a few less of those. I think there's room for both Pant and Jurel. I actually think it will extend Pant's career to not have to keep wickets on a permanent basis for India. If he can position himself at first slip for a little bit, not as much up and down, not as much back and forth to the stumps, preserve a little bit of his energy for the back half of his career, I think that's going to be to the good from an overall Indian perspective.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and maybe this is a great sort of segue to Sai Sudharsan as well, he has the technique and the average, the numbers in first-class cricket to bat at number 3 for India if they actually want him to. He has that technique and the ability. So, yeah, I'm completely on this train. You're not getting any of my stock. That's fair enough.
Okay, well, I'll have to wait for another issue from the BCCI of Jurel, J stock, or Jurel, D stock, I should say. Lippy, Sai Sudharsan. You hold all the position on Sudharsan.
I think Jamie owns a bit too, but
he's sensing the dollar in terms of positions held. What have you seen from Sudharsan in this Test match? He's batting at 3. Has he done enough for you to keep his spot going forward? Because there will be competition for places going forward for India.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question, right? Is how long, how much do the BCCI believe in him in terms of, and the coaching staff believe in him to give him the runway? Because if you're thinking about maybe Pant coming back, the question is, do you play Sai Sudharsan? Do you drop Sai Sudharsan and play both of those guys if you want to play Jurel and Pant? Or do you just leave out someone like Yashasvi Kumar Reddy, who really, I mean, they sort of almost felt like charity to bump him up the order in that second, or in that innings, in the second Test, to kind of go out there and have a bit of fun and enjoy yourself. You've fielded and done not a lot in this series so far. It does feel like he's wasted down there at 8. There's no need for Yashasvi Kumar Reddy. So, I would personally stick with Sai Sudharsan. I think I was delighted to see him, put a score on the board. It's a shame he didn't go on and get that 100. I was interested to see, I guess the thing is that he hasn't. You don't want to be in a situation where you're a player who looks comfortable but isn't going on and cashing in these big scores. And that's how I felt on him so far. I mean, very, very early stages, obviously, in his career. Raj, you said something to me in the chat that you don't feel he's comfortable, you don't feel he's looking that great against spin. What do you mean by that?
I think I used the word organised. I think he looks a bit unorganised against spin. And what I mean there is, if you watch him bat, when he's playing spin, he's chosen to play back. His trigger movement is literally just step straight back. And what that means is if the ball does something crazy and his hands aren't fast enough, he's going to get hit in the pads, or he's going to miss it, or whatever that may be. If you watched Jaiswal, he fell into a similar trap where he just took a step back and the ball cannoned back in, but he was actually able to get his hands in the way, his bat in the way. He had fast hands. Sudharsan is missing that at this stage. If you look at someone like, I'm not going to compare him to an Indian, if you look at someone not from the subcontinent, like a Michael Clarke, for example, when he played spin, the way that his feet moves are completely different. He would take a massive step to the offside and he knew he was going to knock it into the leg side. He'd take a massive step back into the leg side and play it through the offside. He never got his legs in front of the stumps. But in saying that's a technical flaw that he can fix. And if you were to issue more stock Sai Sudharsan, I would be buying it, because clearly he is in between, like in the A Tour against Australia, scored nice runs in the second test. And he scored runs here. He was dropped, I think, on 50-odd before getting out for 87, I think he got in the first innings. Yep. I didn't see how he got out this morning. But I think that he is capable of playing Test cricket for India, which, take a ticket at the moment. That's a very long line of capable Test cricketers, but I would be buying stock in him. I think he's good enough.
I completely agree with you, and I think there's room for both in this Indian side. I think you're right, Stu. There's one too many all-rounders in that team. I think if you were playing on a green seamer in England, Nitish Kumar Reddy might give you a bit of an option as a fourth seamer to go with one of the two spinners. But if you're playing in India, and I know you can only bowl two spinners at a time, right? But having Kuldeep and Washington and Jadeja all doing different things with cricket ball, a hugely powerful attack. And what we're starting to see is Mohammad Siraj being able to carry the pace bowling battery. It's not a case anymore of Bumrah at one end and what was it? Hadley at one end and the Illingford third 11 at the other end. It's no longer the case anymore. Siraj is performing on a level with Bumrah in terms of taking wickets and breaking games open for India. So that is like...
I'm glad you mentioned him, because I thought that was massive. His energy I think his energy in that second session yesterday, when Hope and Campbell were just looking so smooth and so calm, and that they had everything under control. That lead was reducing, and then slowly starting to grow. I can't remember whether they'd ticked it over by the time Hope got out, but I think it was purely the energy that Siraj showed that kind of got that wicket. Like, he got that because he ran in so hard and he created a mistake out of Shai Hope. Well, I mean, the pitch also played its part, but it was at a time when I think, if we're going to be critical, we've been very pro Jasprit Bumrah and given him plenty of praise. I think his radar was a bit off in this test. He probably didn't make people play enough, both in that first innings with the new ball and then at different times. I mean, it was, I thought, a curious decision not to open with him in that second innings. So maybe that played a role in that he didn't actually come into that second innings until much later in the piece. But yeah, I think Siraj, that was such a big moment to get Shai Hope's wicket, and he got that from showing the heart that we've seen him display so much over the past 12 months.
Certainly the cricketer in world cricket that wears his heart on his sleeve, just about, if not more than anyone else. Is there anything else that we want to hit in terms of talking points before we move off this India-West Indies test match, boys?
I think we probably have to just mention Shubman Gill as well, just given that he's now got 5 test hundreds this year, another. I mean, kind of, we've talked about his captaincy a bit. Interesting sort of reminder when I saw the headline when this game finished that said, Gill wins his first series. We have to kind of remember that he only is that England series and then this one. But to think that he scored 5 test hundreds, I think I saw in the thing that's tied now ever for an Indian captain with Virat Kohli in a year. I mean, 4 of them were obviously in that remarkable England-India series. But they showed some stats actually in the first test about kind of where he's hitting the ball now. I don't know if you remember seeing that in the commentary. And it was basically just a reflection of, it's not that long ago that lots of people were saying Shubman Gill's just not going to live up to his potential as a test cricketer. He's got all the talent in the world, but he's averaging 30, 35. He's just not taking these opportunities. And it seems basically since that time, he's made the decision and the technical changes to go, well, I'm going to start hitting the ball. When it's straighter, I'm going to hit the ball straighter. I'm going to hit it through mid-on rather than trying to work it all on the leg side. And they showed his setup and, did the full technical breakdown. And you can see just the pitch, or what's it called? The
wagon wheel.
The wagon wheel showing, the percentages of where he hits the ball now and where he's picked up his runs. And it's clearly making a massive difference. And you can see when he hits off spin now, he hits very sort of, just wide mid-on. Yeah, he's looking, all class. And to pick up another 100, they've got South Africa next. And again, it's a great chance, you would think, to maybe rack up another 100 and get himself at the top of that list.
It actually would be an interesting statistic to find out how many Indian hundreds have been scored with an MRF branded bat in the last 30 years. That would be an interesting stat to get when he's changed in March to MRF.
Is he?
He did, yes.
Good bat maker. Other bat makers
are available.
Available?
Yes, okay.
Unless MRF want to contact us and sponsor the pod. Then they're the only bat maker available.
What I like about Shubman Gill is he just looks really, really settled when he's batting now. I think previously, mentally, the way he was organised or arranged was a bit different to how he has done it this way. An example is, there were plenty of times in that first innings in the second test where he would just face 4 or 5 balls from a spinner and then just nudge one into the offside and get a single, or one around just for a single off 4 or 5 balls, and then do the hard work to get to 100, and then he went and started clobbering it and got that strike rate back up. But he's not worried about having to go out there and score runs quickly or do things based on the game. He is playing every ball based on its merit, and you can really see it. He just looks like he's got so much time. He's so organised, very, very, very exciting. The other one I wanted to – did you want to say anything about
No.
The other one I wanted to talk about was Jaiswal. What did you make of his innings? I thought that he looked very, very, very comfortable again at the wicket. The thing that I like about Jaiswal is the way that he ebbs and flows with the game. He can block out 3 maidens and then score 20 runs off 4 balls. Like, I just love the way that he is able to adjust, and there's no pressure, and he just, I felt like the only way they were going to get him out was run out, and that happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, he may be a bit dark with Shubman. I think he's sold him down the river there, really. But, what more can we say about Jaiswal? I found it surprising that a couple of people on the comments last week were saying, because of all these other guys, when we were talking about Jurel and, other people stepping up, they were saying, well, Sudharsan and Jaiswal, we're going to have to watch out. I mean, Jaiswal's just locked in for a long, long time, the way that he started his career. As you say, the tempo is so, so impressive, the way that he's able to play in innings where he could score 100 off 200 balls, or he can score one off 80 balls. And he seems to have a good sense of when he needs to do that.
There's game awareness. It's very, very, very good.
Yeah. So, yes, very impressive. And on to South Africa for them in November, and the West Indies obviously come here. So we'll talk about that in the future. But, yeah, that West Indies side, again, it's going to be very different for them coming here, right? There's different challenges and kind of pitches that they're going to have to face. But I think we said last week, right, there's a few guys in that team. Greaves, I think, will be a decent proposition. We were talking about his batting last week. He obviously scored 50 in this game. He only averages 20 with the bat.
Feels like a lot more than that.
It does feel like a lot more. And then I went through his innings list, and it makes for a pretty horrible reading, to be honest. So I don't know if I'm obviously just tuning in at the right times. Even that Australia series, I feel like I remember thinking, oh yeah, he's decent batter, but he got 18 and 17, and so
yeah, but he got 18 and 17 in a side that was bowled out for 112.
It's all relative.
So
27.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the West Indies coming here. If they're building throughout this India tour, I think with the seam attack that they have, and if they continue to attack with the bat, I think that will pose an interesting challenge for New Zealand when they arrive on these shores. Let's segue now. I want to talk about the Women's World Cup. Games every night in this Women's World Cup. We're about halfway, I think, through the pool play, and some interesting things developing in terms of the table. I think it's shaping up not quite in the way that a lot of people would have expected. Some results that are going down to the wire. There's been some great cricket being played, some really, really competitive and close games in this Women's World Cup. Where do we want to start? I wouldn't mind just touching on South Africa at some point. Obviously, we're going to talk about Australia, England, India, etc., and we'll clearly talk about the New Zealanders as well. Where do we want to start here, boys?
I feel like we should clear the runway and let you talk about that Australia-India game, because it was a brilliant game. 330 plays, 337 down. Yep. Right down to the wire. Well, they ended up winning it with an over to spare, but At different times, it felt like the game was going back and forth. I don't know. You must have been delighted watching that because India again. We'll talk about them in a second. They've played some good cricket and found themselves on the wrong end of a couple of results, particularly in this game because they pushed Australia right to the edge.
Raj, you talked about Shubman, Gill, Jaiswal, their game awareness and their ability to understand the ebb and flow of the game and adapt their performance and their approach to suit. This is the most match-aware cricket side I think we've ever seen. Yes, you can't be match-aware and do the things that Australia are doing in this World Cup, 120 for 5, 70 for 7, having to chase 330 against India. You can't do those things without talent. And Australia have a talented team that will be as good as we've seen in generations in terms of talent, and certainly is up there with the 48 Bradman team, the Taylor Border War teams, the Ponting team in 2006-07. They're as talented, if not more talented, than those teams. They're the most rounded, they're the most well-rounded cricket team I think we've ever seen in terms of, you have a look at the all-round ability of Perry, Sutherland, Gardner, Talia McGrath, even Alana King batting at 10 or 11 scored 50. But
Kim Garth's been quite good in this.
But you have a look at the way they go about their business. They are the most match-aware cricket team that I think we've ever seen. They assess the situation, as you were talking about Gill and Jaiswal, as well, if not better than anyone. And they have, at somewhere in that order, they have someone who's prepared to do the hard work. You have a look at Alana King's innings where she got 50 at the end of that. I can't remember which game it was. It was the one Australia batted first, and it might have been the second game. 50 in a very, very important innings to get Australia to 220, 230 and set up a winning score. But she was prepared to do the hard work up until the last couple of overs and then took the opportunity to go large. And I think generally there aren't that many cricket teams that are prepared to operate like that in the modern game, particularly the men's game. You have a look at the way England go about their business. You just feel like if England could lock themselves into the same level of match awareness that these Australian women have, their ceiling is the level of dominance that we're seeing from these Australian women at the moment. Fortunately for us Australians and for all the other cricket teams around the world, they haven't quite locked in that level of match awareness yet. But look, this Australia team, they've shown some vulnerability in this series, but the fact that they're so experienced, they're so calm under pressure and match aware, they're able to pull 2 or 3 big performances from different players up and down that batting order to come up with 3 wins on the bounce and a no result against the Sri Lankans. Just unbelievable performance. But does that, as neutrals or as outsiders looking into this Australia team, does that make you feel like, Raj, like they're vulnerable and they can be upset, or does that just tell you, look, it doesn't actually matter what we do against this Australian team, they'll just find a way to win?
No, if I was on the opposing team, I would be very worried going into this match playing against Australia. They, as you said, know exactly what they're doing in each role within the game, that they just know what they have to do. They can switch roles if something goes wrong. They've just got so much experience. Like it's not like these guys have played one World Cup and won it. They've just got a history of winning, and they're just winners. It's like the dominance that the men's Australian team had in the early 2000s. Like it's you turn up in warm-ups and you've lost. I feel like that's going on here. So I'd be as an opposition player, I would want to be avoiding Australia. That would be my.
I mean, you saw. I think obviously that the way that they've had some scares, like you said, in this World Cup, and they've been able to come through them. But I think that the way they went about that 330 chase sort of showed me what a good side they were. That they went at that run rate the whole time, which they always were on. I know they ended up losing a couple of wickets at times and the game got away, but they basically just kept on track. I remember a few years ago now, Raj, we were watching the New Zealand-India ODI, and we're sitting there watching, and Tom Latham kind of anchored an innings that got New Zealand home with a big 100. And we were sitting there going, where do we want to be at 35 overs? Where do we want to be at 40 overs? And it was basically like Australia just did that in this chase. They went, okay, well, we want to be 70 off the first, I can't remember what it was, but, we want to be at the run rate at this time, and we want to have only lost this many wickets. And they just kept hitting all of those markers. Obviously, Alyssa Healy's innings was fantastic, but yeah, just it's a world record chase, and they didn't look like they were daunted by the fact that they had to go out and do that.
But can I say, we're talking about it like it's a surprise. Like, surely it's business as usual. Chase down record scores.
It's absolutely business as usual for this Australian team in that they're getting the performances that they need when they need them. Right? We haven't seen a complete dominating performance wire to wire from Australia yet. I think we'll see that in some of their upcoming games. They've got Bangladesh next. Then they finish with England and South Africa. I think that will be a real bellwether test for Australia. If they can dominate either of or both of those teams, I think it will tell us a lot about how they're trending. England are trending well, though. They're 3-0. They've beaten South Africa, thrashed South Africa, really, to be fair. Done the business against Bangladesh, done the business against Sri Lanka, albeit a little bit of a few nervous moments there. Is there anything that's surprising us about this England team 3 games into the World Cup?
I think they're just, as you say, it's that they're just getting the job done, and they probably haven't played. The India, when they play India, when they play, these Australia, that'll be the test for them, because I think what we've seen now from, I'm moving away from England because I don't think that their World Cup is. I mean, I know that they did have to have. They had a scare. They've got through that, and obviously that's big for them. But I think the most interesting, the two most interesting sides certainly this week have been South Africa and India, because we saw, we talked about it last week on the pod. South Africa got absolutely, demolished by England in that game, and you're thinking, okay, well, like, where does this leave their World Cup? In tatters, because their run rates are shambles. That's going to be a fight for that 4th spot. But they just, have found a way 3 games in a row. That actually beat New Zealand fairly comfortably in the end. That was going to be a big game for New Zealand and for South Africa. Obviously, from a New Zealand point of view, it was a shame to see the White Ferns go down in that game. But that India game, fantastic. They played brilliantly in that game to kind of get through from a position where at a lot of different moments, I mean, that game ebbed and flowed in terms of, South Africa had India in all sorts of trouble. Rishi Ghosh puts on a score, 94, I think it was, to get India, the momentum going into the break. South Africa loses a couple of early wickets, get a partnership going. Then they're 100 for 6, and then it's, try on and de Klerk kind of get them home. And you're thinking, gee, this is like they were showing some of the attributes that you talked about that Australia showing in this World Cup. So it's big for them. And now it feels to me like they're qualified. And, if results go as we expect, they've kind of put themselves into that top 4.
So, putting into the top 4, that's kind of where I want to go with this. So how does that landscape sit now? So South Africa, after beating us, probably did us a favour by also beating India.
Mm-hmm.
So it puts our destiny a little bit in our own hands. We can play India and beat them, and if we beat England, we're through.
Yep.
Against India, it might come down to run rate, perhaps. I think they've got a much better run rate than we do.
So New Zealand minus 0.2, South Africa minus 0.6, India plus 0.6. But India next play England, then they play New Zealand. Then they play Bangladesh, and that will finish out their group play. I think India's 2 losses make them vulnerable. I know it's against South Africa and against Australia, but what it means is if they lose to England and or they lose to New Zealand, that puts them under real pressure for that 4th spot. I think it opens the door for New Zealand if they can beat India. Now, obviously, New Zealand need to take care of Sri Lanka tonight.
Yeah.
Then they need to take care of business against Pakistan. Big wins in those 2 games put the run rate pressure on India. Then the game of the tournament for New Zealand is that India game, because that is effectively a quarterfinal. At that point, yes, they've got to play England, I think, in their last pool game. But to me, that India game now assumes as much, if not more importance. In fact, it's more important than the South Africa game, I think, for New Zealand going forward.
Yeah, assuming everyone does the business, then that's the situation. I mean, New Zealand had to. We were in trouble again against Bangladesh. Bangladesh just caused a few problems for teams in this tournament, but we're in trouble against them, 38 for 3, and Sophie Devine continuing her good form in this World Cup combines with Brooke Halliday, and they get us to a reasonable total, and the bowlers did the job. But I don't know. I mean, if I was an Indian fan, I wouldn't be too disheartened by. I think they've played some great cricket in this World Cup. I mean, you're looking at Smriti Mandana and Pratika opening the batting, and they look fantastic. Mandana, I saw she's the youngest and fastest to score 5,000 ODI runs. I mean, looks all class. But I think that opening partnership is big for them. If you can get two of them early, then you're into that side, and suddenly they start to feel a bit more vulnerable because in the games that they've played well, they've been able to get off to good starts and sort of build from there. So I don't know. I would still, wouldn't surprise me if they, tipped over England and then knocked over us quite comfortably. I don't know that New Zealand's playing super well. We got to get some more. We got to get some more from the likes of Susie Bates and just some support for Sophie Devine. Really, we've got to get more out of that batting lineup, which has been something we've talked about in the past in this White Fern side.
Any other World Cup points before we move on? I mean, the next week it's really moving week this week. Big games for New Zealand, India, England's going to be a big clash, and then that group fixture at the back end of the tournament. There's some real big names playing each other in those last two rounds. As it stands, New Zealand in fifth, India in fourth, but I think potentially anything could happen over the next week or two. What else do we have on the agenda, lads? I'm just going to go back to the Slack channel.
Well, we've got New Zealand, England starting this weekend. Black Caps, England.
Yes, Black Caps, England.
Yeah.
Are you excited? More meaningless white ball cricket against an English-speaking nation. Are we stoked for this, or are we kind of there?
I don't know that I'm buzzing, fizzing to for this series in the way that you've talked about it just then. It's got that feel of this is early season. We're just sort of. I think for the most part, it's because New Zealand's side just doesn't feel complete yet, and that's largely due to injury. We've got Santner and Ravindra return for this T20 series. At least, they've named the T20 side, but, we're looking at Sears, who's now had another hamstring injury.
Oh, has he? Yeah.
Out for 3 or 4 weeks. So he misses out. But Finn Allen, Adam Milne, Will O'Rourke, Glenn Phillips, Lockie Ferguson, all still injured. And particularly O'Rourke, Allen, Phillips, Ferguson, I think they're all very much in the mix for spots in that World Cup side. So not having them there, what I want to see from these T20 games that we've got against England and then against the West Indies and then we move into January and start playing. I think we go to India for more white ball stuff leading into that tournament, is a sense of what this bowling attack is going to take, how this bowling attack is going to take shape. And we might, maybe realistically, we're not going to get a sense of that because, conditions, we expect spin to play a bigger role over at the T20 World Cup than it probably will in our home summer. And, maybe that means that over there, Phillips, Santner, Bracewell, Ravindra all bowl in those World Cup games. And we're talking about only one or two, or only a couple of seamers, maybe 3 seamers at most in that side. So maybe it's not realistic to think that. But yeah, Henry, I think we know is our top bowler. But then there's Duffy, who I think at the moment is probably leading the charge for that. But then there's a bunch of other guys, Folkes and Jameson, and I just don't know what to make of it until we kind of get all those other guys back in the mix.
And do you know how we find out, though? By watching cricket, and I think that we're going to see some good cricket. I'm fired up for it. I actually want to look at it from a positive perspective, mainly because the talk out of the camp has been, sure, those players aren't there, but we are still trying to execute this game plan. This is a game plan that we are going to take to the World Cup. I'm looking forward to having Mitchell Santner back to control some of the bowling, because I was not pleased with how our bowling executed against Australia. The postage to get all those balls back would have been horrendous.
Yeah, you'd think he's going to make a big difference, Santner. He's so reliable in that white ball formats.
And then the big one for me is actually going to be a real focus on our batting. I know we are missing some key components, but we need to put together the consistent performance, a good power play, sort of 45 plus runs, no wickets down or 1 wicket down, and then setting us up for a launching pad for that sort of 12 to 15 over period for our finishes. My argument for Jimmy Neesham is still in play here.
Finisher.
I'd like to see him come in and be that finisher, come in with that sort of 30 to 40 balls to go and score 70 runs or put 70 runs on the board with a partner. So I think that there is still a lot to look forward to in this tournament against a good team. So I'm looking forward to it. Big focus for me as well on Conway. I need to see some runs from him too.
Absolutely need to see runs from Conway because with Seifert and Tim Robinson performing reasonably well of late.
Yep. Finn Allen to come back in the mix maybe.
Finn Allen to come back, and you've got Ratchin in the mix as well. Chapman hasn't done himself any disservice in that top 3, so there's congestion for spots in the top 4. Speaking of which, where do you see Ratchin batting in this white ball series? ODIs and T20s, and what are you expecting from him? What's the pass mark from Ratchin in this particular set of games against England, do you think?
I think he bats at three or 4. Maybe in the one day as he might open the batting, I don't know, but I think he'll bat at 3 definitely in the 2020 stuff.
Yeah, unless they want Robinson in there ahead of a Chapman maybe, and then they kind of might go 3 and then Ratchin at 4, Mitchell 5, kind of push those guys down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. There is no sort of. I mean, obviously we want him to score runs, but there is no pass mark for me. I wanted to see him to come back in and start scoring runs. I'm not going to put a sort of a metric on it, but I'd like to see him come in and influence our batting total.
I think you mentioned it before, Jimmy Neesham. I do think that Neesham Bracewell is quite interesting and something I'm going to be watching over the course of the summer. I mean, yeah, I'm sort of like you. I would love to see Neesham be in the form where because he just feels like he can hit the ball out of the park in the way that some other guys can't. I know he hasn't been as consistent at times, but I don't know that Bracewell's been super consistent. Bracewell's sort of had his moments where, he obviously goes and scores a big 100 or he'll do something amazing. And he obviously adds with the spin bowling as well. But yeah, I sort of don't. I think there's room probably for both of them in the side, depending on how we want to frame the bowling attack in general. But I would like to see at least one of those guys sort of really show, kind of lock down their spot. Which sounds silly because I think Bracewell's spot is kind of locked down anyway. I don't think there's really a scenario where they don't go into that World Cup, obviously other than injury, but where he isn't one of the all-rounders in the side or a bowling option, batting 7, whatever. But I'd like to see him play an innings of consequence. And maybe that, again, is silly to say for someone who's batting 7 or 6, because if the guys at the top do the job, then you don't need, they're not required. They come in and they hit 10 off 3 balls and you're like, great job. But yeah, I'd really like to see an innings of consequence from Neesham and from Bracewell throughout this series and then moving into the West Indies series.
Right. Well, I'm glad someone's excited for that series. I'm struggling to get up for it, to be fair, even though it's got New Zealand in it. But I'm sure once it rolls around and the opportunity to actually go and watch some live cricket in New Zealand,
we'll get there, man. Saturday morning, you'll be fired up.
I'll be fired up.
Yeah.
I'll be fired up. Excellent. Well, that's good news. So, future Baldy, get fired up for this Black Caps v England series. You heard it here first. I'm giving myself messages. Right. Anything else that we wanted to touch on, Stu? Did you want to talk about Asian Cup qualifiers? A couple of
I just thought we wanted to
fringe New Zealand players.
Give Ross Taylor, Sean Solia another kind of shout out for the work they're doing over for Samoa. We talked about it last time. They just had to win one game, kind of get into that, and they did. They beat PNG. Sean Solia, man of the match. 60 odd to kind of get them into that. And, if we think back, PNG were at the last World Cup. So it's a big win for Samoa to get that. They go into the Super Sixes, but unfortunately first game of that Super Sixes, lost to Japan. A really very close game. They needed about 12 off 8 when Ross Taylor went out. Kind of game that, 5 years ago, 10 years in his prime, you're thinking, okay, Ross Taylor's just going to nail this and we win this. Or he takes us to a super over. Thinking about that a few series, a few little dark patches there where we we ended up in too many super overs. But yeah, it just felt like a game that they win that against Japan and they're right in the mix. I mean, they're still, I think it's pretty tough now. It's that sort of Super 6 format where you carry over your points. They were one of the sides that didn't carry over the points. So really they're going to have to win both games and kind of hope things go their way when, other sides like Nepal, who's just won their first game, look like they might now qualify for the World Cup. Again, a couple of games to go, but that's pretty cool for a site for Nepal. So
that score sheet will be in hot demand. It's not very often you see Ross Taylor bowled Suzuki caught someone else. But Japan have actually been, from sort of what I've been reading and looking at the scorecards, have been a very, very good team. They've got 120 million people to choose from. You'd think they'd be able to put a great team on, and they look like they have come on leaps and bounds.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, obviously we're not getting a huge amount of coverage here, so I haven't seen a huge amount of it. Very, very small snippets of highlights. But I was checking. First thing I did on that Monday morning, I think, was check that score. And I did have to dive back in because Cricinfo wasn't even covering it live. So I had to kind of wait until the scoreboard fully refreshed. But yes, really disappointing because that would have been very, very cool if, particularly for Sean Solia, who's played, for someone, I mean, Taylor's kind of had his opportunity. Solia's had a really nice career here in Auckland and in New Zealand in general. Played New Zealand A games, but hasn't quite been able to make or get that opportunity to play for New Zealand because of our batting stocks. So yeah, would be very cool to see him, like some of the other players, Max O'Dowd, players like that get to go to a World Cup. Logan Van Beek get to experience that. So yeah, hopefully they can pull off these last couple of games and make it happen. But at this stage, I would have to bet against it probably.
Which will be a shame for Samoan cricket fans and for Ross Taylor fans and for Sean Solia fans, of which there are many.
Who's going to be most upset is our South African fans. They've been demoted below Samoa in the run sheet.
Well, look, there are plenty of North Shore Auckland cricket fans that are from that part of the world that will be
trying to get every last second because the game is currently going on. So we're not really going to talk about Pakistan, South Africa, are we?
We will.
Going to give us a score update.
Score update. Pakistan lead by 145. South Africa 36. No, Pakistan 36 for 2.
Oh, they've lost a couple.
Lost a couple just before lunch. Imam stumped Verena bowled Harmer, so that's good news for me because I'm a Verena fan. And Harmer picked up the other wicket of Shan Masood, LBW. Look, the reality is that what we're looking at here is what's going to happen in the South African middle order going forward. 100 for Tony de Zorzi, batting at 4. Obviously, Temba Bavuma not playing in this game. Persisting with Vian Mulder at 3, which surprises me a little bit.
Injured.
But Bavuma is injured. He's obviously out with injury. Not
so long ago get a very enormous score.
He did. Look, he did. It just surprises me that they've got all of these riches in that team. They've got Markram, Rickleton, de Zorzi, Stubbs, Brevis, Verena.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's someone else. Leandro Pretorius obviously hasn't played that much, but is a prodigious talent. And you've got Bavuma. So persisting with Vian Mulder at 3 is an interesting one for me. But there we go. They continue to do it. Any other talking points?
I did look through this team sheet, and my sort of stance on South Africa over the last few years has been to the negative, especially against you fellas. But I still look at that lineup and I go, where is 400 runs going to come from?
Yeah.
This is barring the pitches that they're on currently over in Pakistan, which is another question I want to ask you about. But I still think where are the runs going to come from consistently? Am I being harsh, or is that still a reality?
I think it's still a question that they need to resolve. They need to prove to us. I mean, again, they won the World Test Championship, but it wasn't on the back of runs. Stacks and stacks of runs. Aiden Markram's 100 in that winning innings aside. Yeah, it wasn't even their sort of run to the final wasn't based on them just piling on runs. So that's something they're going to have to prove. And they're going to they've got a pretty tough draw. They are here then in the Pakistan is becoming a very, very difficult place to go because of the way they're setting up their pitches and, with Noman and Sajid, the way that their spin bowling attack actually, is performing. So it's proving a very difficult place. And then they go to India, which, India, we've just seen them take care of West Indies. South Africa, you would think, would provide a bigger challenge than that. But again, and depending on the kind of wickets we get to see over there, that could prove challenging for South Africa as well. So yeah, I think this next cycle we're going to see whether they can kind of carry on that momentum in the Test game. I do think in this Test, it's worth noting that Maharaj isn't playing. He may well come back for the second Test. Hopefully he will, because I think that they miss him a lot. We've talked about him.
I don't think that they miss him. They really miss him. I think he is one of the very few all format locked bowlers in world cricket from a spin perspective for their national side. I mean, Australia doesn't have one. England kind of has one, but not. I mean, actually, no, they don't. They don't, because Bashir doesn't play T20 cricket. So, he is the most important bowler.
Santner's becoming one for New Zealand, perhaps.
But even then, it's not in all conditions. Whereas Maharaj should be playing in all conditions. So other than Rabada, he's their most important bowler. I think you're absolutely right. So consistency from the middle order is what we want to see. Raj, 100% agree with you. His 8, 0, 2 and 11 is not getting it done. 4 through 8. For South Africa going forward, but it is good to see, Rickleton getting runs, big Rickleton fans here, and Tony de Zorzi, who I think is a prodigious talent, also getting 100.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is you're both sort of affected with, having spin bowling as your primary form of bowling, but surely it's not that interesting to watch 90 out of 110 overs being spin bowling. Surely there has to be some balance to it, a little bit of pace bowling, especially when they have on both teams great sets of pace bowlers. Surely you don't find that exciting is my first question. And the second question is, this cannot be doing Pakistan any favours creating these pitches at home, right? I mean, if you look back to India, sort of the end of middle to end of the MS Dhoni era, the start of the Kohli era, they were like, we can't just play on spinning pitches if we want to go out and dominate the world. We need to create some better pitches so that we can craft our game to play all around the world. This is surely not doing Pakistan any favours with these absolute Bunsen burners.
Maybe not long term. In the short term, I think it's a good. I think it's there. I think there's every chance that this cycle, based on the fixtures that they have, that this is their best pathway to a World Test Championship final. I agree with you that maybe it's not. It's not creating the most well-rounded cricket side, and we've talked about them many times over the years about different things that cause problems on and off the field for Pakistan. But I do enjoy watching it. I do enjoy watching the spin, but I would enjoy it more if we saw 35 overs of seam and then the spin
and 80 overs
and then the spin took over. That's what we all want as fans. I think we all want to see kind of balance where seam bowlers have their chance, batters have their chance, spin takes over. I think that's the ideal for everyone. But I think Pakistan have at least I was going to say rightly, because they've been able to show that it works, particularly with Sajid and Noman Ali, that they have two bowlers here, and they've got Salman Ali Agha who can kind of back them up a little bit. And if their batters are going to get 300, nearly 400, if they can do that, which hasn't been easy to do over in basically since they've gone to this spin strategy over at home, if they're able to bat first, put on a big score, and then get the pitches to turn. I mean, we're talking now. This game's still going. That they could fall over, crumble in this, and then South Africa could chase it down, and they lose. And suddenly you're going, okay, well, if we're not going to, I think to round out what I'm saying, if they're winning, I think it's fair enough. If they start getting in the situation where they're making it such a lottery that they can't win these games, then I think it's bad. Does that make any sense?
It does, but I think it's a double standard that you've held India to over the years, where you're it's another Turner, it's another
I've been the least critical, I would say, of turning pitches. As you know, I don't have a huge problem
maybe
with
not
spinning
you, but
pitches.
I think the narrative has been that this is not good.
Yes, I think the general media narrative, and I'm like I don't know. There's probably plenty of people that share your view that this is not good for Pakistan cricket, that this is not that entertaining to watch. I don't think this test in particular is an example of that. I think that other tests have been much worse than this. Over when we were talking about fans and the actual extractor fans, not the fans in the ground. But in that sort of scenario, I think it's taking it too far. I think back to when New Zealand went to Bangladesh and those pitches there were just like, it was an absolute lottery. You couldn't really bat properly on those pitches, and that's when, even if you have a good spin attack, you're not maximizing the conditions that you're creating. And that's where, Pakistan at the moment seem to be getting that balance just right, or, just enough right to be able to be winning these games.
I think short-term optimization at the cost of balance, at the potential cost of long-term building of the game in Pakistan. So you've developed young, prodigiously talented fast bowlers in Shaheen Shah Afridi, Haris Rauf, Naseem Shah. You've got prodigiously talented fast bowlers in Pakistan who would look at the test venues that Pakistan are producing and go, why do I bother? And I'm with you, Raj, to a certain extent that, yes, we have been critical of pitches in India for lack of balance between bat and ball, and also lack of balance between different types of bowling. Any test match where you bowl 2 overs of seam and then it's entirely spin is not a game that I enjoy as a fan, even though I am a leg spinner. So we have to be fair and say that, I have to be fair and say that a game that's dominated by, and let's have a look at the Pakistan bowling here. Like Noman's got 6, Sajid Khan's got 3. They've bowled 88 overs between them, and Salman's bowled another 7. So that's 95 overs of spin and 9 overs of everything else. That's not a game of cricket that I would particularly enjoy watching if I was to pay my hard-earned and go to that game. Yes, it could be potentially short-term success for Pakistan. Pakistan needs success on the field to satisfy their wider fan base, but what does that do for attracting fans to go and pay their money and go to the ground and watch games of cricket? Only time will really tell, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not a great product if we're wanting young 8 to 10-year-olds to come out and watch Test cricket as opposed to watching the PSL. So time will tell from that perspective.
Good to see Baba and Rizwan back. Scored some runs as well in the first innings.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what they missed in the T20s, Raj. You have a look at that Asia Cup when they got into the final. I know it's Monday morning quarterbacking, but their middle order lacked a bit of starch. And you have a look at the starch in this Pakistan batting lineup. I know no one got past 93, but there was plenty of starch from Masood. I know Bubba only got 23, but Rizwan got 75. And all of a sudden, a little bit of continuity, a little bit of stickiness in the middle order, and that looks like a real cricket team. And when they have bowlers that can go out and take 6 for and take 3 for bowling 40 overs on the trot, that is a recipe. That
400 runs batting first in Pakistan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Make it go. Anything else that we want to cover, chaps, before we wrap up this week in cricket for a week?
I'm all good. I half expected you to have another Ashes rant, but
I don't have
maybe
one.
you want to save that for when the
I'll
British
save it for next
boys
week.
are here.
Yep.
Does the Ashes soon?
Soon, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's coming up. Yep. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to the pod before we leave?
No, nothing from me. It's been very enjoyable having you steer the ship. Binksy, we'll have to look at the depth charts of the top order podcast.
Oh, look, I think he's
I
still...
thought you were going to say it was enjoyable to have him staring at you the whole podcast.
It's always great.
Not the whole podcast, but I have perfected going left to go right.
Yes.
You see what I've done there? Yep. Right, that concludes this week in cricket.
The people on audio haven't seen that you've done about 3 little twirls for us.
That's because they're on audio. They should be watching us on YouTube and listening to us on whatever podcast streaming service you're listening to us on. So thank you for joining us here on the Top Order podcast. Play your cricket the right way, and we'll be back with more coverage next time on the Top Order pod. Until then, see you soon.